What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plaisant's podcast filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we are going to be continuing our college football preview. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, and the comment button. I love seeing you guys interact with these videos. I love doing them. But let's go ahead and hop right into the preview of the Stanford Cardinals. Let's go ahead and hop into the stars first. Elik Eomanor, I believe is his name. Wide receiver, deep threat for this offense. We saw a good amount of him last season, and I think we'll see him a lot this year. The Stanford offense is going to be heavily leaning on his ability to make plays, especially when it comes to taking the top off the defense. On the defensive side of the ball, Colin Wright, this is the best corner on the team. He's going to be lining up in the slot a lot. So ACC teams that Stanford has to play, Colin Wright is going to be having to lock down that slot position. There's actually a lot of good slot receivers in the ACC, so Colin Wright versus those guys, that's going to be some good matchups to watch. He's the star to look out for on defense. Now, let's go ahead and hop into a couple storylines, talk about the losses and the additions for this team, and then, of course, we will get into our record prediction. So first storyline that I want to talk about, Troy Taylor got the head coaching job at Stanford, I believe, almost 2 years ago. He's only actually coached for one full season, so I guess he's been there for about a year and a half. But this is his big shot. This is a career guy who has been nothing but a positions coach, a high school coach. He's climbed the ranks, grinded, and made his way to the big leagues. The question is, though, this is probably his one and only shot at a Power 4 job. How is he going to fare with that? Now, the hard part about this is Stanford leaves the Pac-12 because it implodes, it collapses, and they go and join the ACC, which has, I don't know, probably 90% of their teams on the East Coast. Cal, SMU, they also join the ACC, but Stanford has a specific issue with this because of their academic standards. It's hard to recruit at Stanford. There have only been a handful of players there that have been drafted over the last 15 years. Now, of course, they have some very, very talented players that have gone here, but I just don't know if they're able to sustain success like this. To me, they are the Vanderbilt of the West, and that is a big problem when it comes to competing in a Power 4 conference. It's hard to put together a very talented roster to contend with a Clemson, a Florida State, a Miami, even a Louisville, a Boston College, a NC State, you name it. Stanford's got a hard time. Troy Taylor takes this job. It's going to be hard for him to succeed, but it is possible. Now let's go ahead and get into the losses and additions for this roster in the upcoming season. The losses side of things, they didn't really lose anybody of note. I was really impressed with their ability to keep their roster pretty much all together. They can continue on a path of chemistry building, continuity. I think that this Stanford team has those things, but it's debatable on whether or not it's going to be quote-unquote helpful to this upcoming year. Now, additions. I do want to talk about one player specifically, a freshman wide receiver who has been projected to be in the starting lineup, Emmett Mosley the fifth, I believe. I think this guy is going to be an amazing deep threat. Although Elik Eomanor is also a deep threat, I think that Emmett Mosley is going to be a sleeper. Watch out for him to have like over 500 or 600 yards receiving this season. That is a true freshman to look out for, and a potential All-American freshman at the end of this season. Now let's go ahead and talk about a couple more storylines. The defensive woes for this team did not get any better. See, that's the big part about this losses and additions thing. They really did not address the defense, which was statistically, in my opinion, the worst defense in college football, in FBS football, not in Power 4 play, in FBS football. And that is really bad when you have to go up against so many talented teams on the schedule like Clemson, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, NC State, Louisville. I mean, the going gets tough, and there's no breaks for this Stanford defense. The one positive was that they don't really have to go up against a Caleb Williams or a Michael Penix or a Cam Ward per se, but I just didn't really see them catch any breaks over the offseason in getting some help on defense. So that is something that I really wanted to point out. The last but not least point is the fact that there is major fatigue in being bi-coastal. Now, Ellen might be bi-coastal, but Stanford is probably going to struggle being that way. It's just not something that is feasible, in my opinion, for a college football program filled with 18 to 21-year-olds to consistently pack them up and send them to the East Coast, 4,000 or 3,000 miles away from their dorm rooms, from their home stadium, and have them play on the road, get them in hotels 3 days before, get them adjusted to the sleep schedule, and expect them to perform at a high level. I mean, for goodness sakes, professional teams, that's a concern. When it comes to a, obviously, semi-pro, amateur-style college football league, it's going to be really hard to do that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the record prediction. I have Stanford going 3-9. It's going to be a rough year, okay? Versus TCU to start the season. Not sure when this game was scheduled, but obviously not a good start. That's a loss, even though it's at home. TCU has gotten much better from last season, and Stanford did not. So TCU gets that win. Cal Poly at home. Thank goodness you got them on the schedule. That's a win. At Syracuse, another loss. Having to travel all the way to New York, third week of the season. Syracuse's defense is better than everybody expects them to be. That's going to be a loss for Stanford, excuse me. At Clemson, top 25 team in the country, on the road. That's a loss for Stanford. Virginia Tech. This is my sleeper of the ACC. I have Virginia Tech doing really well. Their defense is absolutely locked down, and I do not think Stanford will succeed there. That is a loss. At Notre Dame, more of the same. Way more talented on offense and defense on the road. That is a loss. SMU. This is my favorite team to talk about that is not in the mainstream part of the college football media. I love what SMU's done. They have an extremely talented skill position group. I will be rocking with SMU, even though it's at home for Stanford. That's a loss for the Cardinals. Wake Forest at home. I do think Wake Forest is a rebuilding program, and so they're pretty much on par with where Stanford's at. It's at home. I will give them the win. Two wins so far. 2 wins. At NC State, traveling all the way back to the East Coast. No bueno. I will give the loss to Stanford here. Home versus Louisville. Louisville has one of the better defenses of the ACC, an experienced quarterback, a really good head coach. They're not rebuilding, so I will give Louisville the win and Stanford the loss. At Cal, on the road, even though it's not that far, it's not going to NC State or Syracuse, but it's still going on the road nonetheless. I think Stanford is more competitive than people would like to say, so I will give Stanford the loss there. At San Jose State to end the season. Now, they just lost their coach in Brent Brennan, and I don't know if San Jose State has recovered. They had a ton of players transfer out. They're rebuilding their program, and they're not a Power 4 program. I will give Stanford the win, even though it's on the road, finishing the season 3-9. This is a brutal away schedule. The fact that they have to travel so much is it's really hard to do. But that's going to do it for this preview. Make sure that you hit the like button, the subscribe button. Give us a comment, whether it's positive or negative. I'll take it. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.